where basically panelists are going to give their impressions on what the decade means for them, and a bit also to make an appraisal of the impact of the decade, certainly contextualizing it based on where they're working and in which country they come from. And that will be followed by recommendations in the hope that it will inform our outcome statement, which one of the colleagues is going to read out at the end of this session, and hopefully that's going to be a basis upon which discussions will proceed and actions will be taken. So I'm going to move on directly to call on the panelists to give their opinions, given the fact that they've already been introduced. So the first person to share their opinion, their impressions, will be Samantha Sibanda from China.
Thank you so much, Christian. It's a lovely afternoon and greetings to you all. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Dr. Samantha Sibanda, and I speak before you not just as a Zimbabwean who has made a home in China, but as a fervent advocate for the rights and recognitions of people of African descent in China. Most of you might know me as the person who stopped the exhibition, which was in Wuhan, which likened Africans to animals and calling that exhibition theme, This is Africa. And I'm here as someone who has been honored to also participate in the United Nations Fellowship of the People of African Descent. I carry with me not only my aspirations, but also a collective hope of a community striving for recognition, justice, and development. As the decade draws to a close, we celebrate the efforts of all member states, civil society, and all other actors who came together to implement different activities rooted in the spirit of recognition, justice, and development. I would like to salute you. When I first learned about the decade, I personally felt it represents significant opportunities to address systematic challenges faced by people of African descent globally. It signifies a recognition by our leaders of the need for concrete actions to combat discrimination, inequality, and injustice. However, it also highlights the urgency for need for tangible progress and meaningful change. In my view, the decade should serve as a catalyst for proactive measures, not just as a symbolic gesture. It is time for our leaders to acknowledge the pressing issue and take concrete steps to address them. Unfortunately, during the 10-year period, there has been minimal discussions or actions at the grassroots levels, and now I'm going back to China where I'm based, to address these challenges facing the people of African descent. And as my colleague spoke about the post-COVID era, I want to look at the decade, the whole 10 years. If we look the way that Africa or Africans were portrayed in that exhibition for the Wuhan Museum in 2017, the derogative manner and unjust treatments of Africans during the COVID pandemic, I believe these would have been minimized if there was awareness of the decade. It is imperative for China to recognize the significance of the decade and take meaningful steps to address the discrimination and mistreatment experienced by people of African descent within its borders. I must admit, the rise of groups started by both Chinese and Africans to come together to find solutions, which started during the COVID era, as highlighted again by my colleague. And hence, I would like to suggest and support the extension of the decade to give these organizations, these groups, a chance to try and implement some of these changes and awareness. When I look at China and Africa, and as an African based in China, the government-to-government relationship of China and Africa has been, or is got a long history. But then it's not coming down to the ordinary people. it's just government to government. There are numerous challenges that affect human rights of people of African descent, including restrictions of financial transactions. If you are an African, now I'm talking about Africans who hold passports from the continent, not the people of African descent. They have challenges in remitting finances, their salaries back to the continent, and opportunities for employment despite receiving scholarships in China. So China gives the African scholarship, but then it does not employ them. Additionally, there have been barriers to integration and participation for our Africans in the communities. These issues have a direct impact on the human rights and well-being of Africans and need to be addressed through meaningful policy changes and actions that ensure equality, non-discrimination, and fair treatment of all individuals of African descent in China. So my recommendations to China will be an anti-discrimination legislation, implement comprehensive anti-discrimination laws that significantly address the discrimination based on race and ethnicity. Education and awareness. Develop educational program and awareness campaigns to promote understanding and respect of people of African descent in the Chinese society. Access to services. Ensure equal access to healthcare, education, and financial services to people of African descent, and address those barriers that are there which prevent our people from accessing these essential services. Employment opportunities. Create pathways for Africans who have studied in China to access meaningful employment. This can include initiatives to facilitate work visas, language support, and also combat workplace discrimination. Community engagement. Foster that collaboration between African community and Chinese society. Government engagement. Encourage dialogue and cooperation between the Chinese government and African communities, not government, but communities. International collaboration. Engage with international organizations and global community to share best practices. In conclusion, I would like to urge esteemed head of states to revisit the resolution they passed during the General Assembly in 2014 and reflect on the underlying purposes that led them to create this decade. We as global citizens stand here and are ready to offer our assistance and support. While we may not be in our respective homes, but your countries are our second homes, and we consider them our homes. We are committed to contribute to progress. Let us work together to create a more inclusive and prosperous future for all. Thank you all.